Are Russia's troops from Kherson finally getting into the fight in other regions? And if that's true, why aren't they seizing territory? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is November 25th, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. So when we take a look at the map, we can see today we've seen ground attacks in two major fronts. The first is, of course, outside of Donetsk city. This has been a really common location that we've seen Russian forces attempt to make advances. We've actually seen it seem, my hypothesis was that their goal was to create a sort of encirclement around Avdiivka. And they've sort of tried to do that by launching an attack here at oh my God, Pervovmaisk. I'm so sorry. Ukrainian friends. You can see here, it looks like they're trying to slowly extend this pincer movement, but it's going to be a tall order, right? There's a bunch of reasons why this is going to be a challenge. First, they will have to extend and take territory through this natural barrier of this river here, or reservoir feeding river thing. Next, of course, is this northern pincer. And you can see this actually isn't part of a cohesive advance, not a cohesive part of the line. There's this huge gap here, and you can see that the further this advances, the harder a time Ukrainian forces are going, or excuse me, a harder time Russian forces are going to have to further advance, because look at how much the forces in here are actually almost surrounded, the Ukrainian forces to the north, south, and west. And the further they get extended, the more Ukrainian forces are going to be able to hammer them, even as they move along this area here. Now, when you look at the map, you can see that this salient is only maybe 4 or 5 kilometers wide. This is a problem because 4 or 5 kilometers, literally, even small arms fire, certain like light machine guns, can literally touch each other. A northern front Ukrainian machine gun can get you about 2 kilometers, and a southern front machine gun can also get you about 2 kilometers. So literally, this entire area could be under Ukrainian fire. This is a really weak northern prong. And as we've sort of talked about in other videos, it's not clear that this is part of a larger strategy, right? You can see here that Russian forces are trying to make advances in places where it's not clear that there's a real advantage. They're trying to, for example, complete the seizure of Marinka, which is a fine priority, right? Hold the entire town. But if that's the priority, then why attack in other locations? For example, this village here that they haven't seized at all. And here is, I think, the problem that Russian forces are running into, is that Ukrainian artillery, because not only is Ukrainian artillery forces able to match and in many cases exceed Russian artillery forces, that Ukrainians also have the advantage of having top-tier command and control systems. By using technology, the so-called Uber for fire missions, and other sort of advanced NATO-developed command and control systems, the Ukrainians are able to disrupt enemy formations, right? And this is key when we look, for example, at the Wagner efforts that happened at the same time near Bakhmut. You can see here that we've seen these advances, right, to the south and to the east, but Wagner forces also likely pushed into these two towns as well. Well, why? There's not really, this isn't facilitating them seizing Bakhmut. You can see that this town and these roads don't really facilitate Ukrainian forces moving into Bakhmut. So it's not really clear that this is especially valuable if your goal is to actually seize the city itself. But Ukrainian artillery forces are very, very good at spotting Russian formations and engaging them quickly with fire. And what happens is that it means that these forces cannot achieve the levels of concentration needed. You have to reach a certain quantity of military forces in order to stage a really effective singular advance. All right. If you, again, took all these forces, gathered them together, and had them push along these two axes, you would probably be able to, I suspect, break through Ukrainian lines. The problem is that you would have to either stage them very far back, come up with your plan, organize it, and then move your forces into position on the attack. But by doing that, you also create the risk of really disastrous events, like we saw early in the war. This was a common Russian problem where they would have a 50 tank column of tanks moving along these roadways. The problem would be is that Ukrainian drones would spot them, and you would have possibly Ukrainian infantry with javelins early in the war, but now you don't even need infantry with javelins. You just call a fire mission, and these 50 tanks or hundreds of soldiers sitting on a hypothetical roadway, like let's say right along here, they are going to get hit with artillery, torn to pieces, and trapped on this road in many cases. We've seen this happen, and you're going to end up with that line of Russian tanks all destroyed. That means that the only way to launch effective attacks is to literally minimize the amount of forces you actually have concentrating together to make attacks happen, right? If your forces never get that concentrated, they can never be forcibly dispersed by enemy or Ukrainian artillery fire. Obviously, defenders just don't have this same sort of problem. The defenders, because they have the advantage of fortifications and because of their ability to engage in defense in depth, and they don't need to be as concentrated, right? Concentration doesn't necessarily pay the same dividends as defenders. Second, of course, that the rule in military planning is that generally you need if you're the attacker and you need to seize territory from a defender, you need about 3 times the number of troops to seize territory than are defending it. So that would be like a 200-person company at most would probably be able to take on, a 60-person platoon and effectively take that territory. So you can see how quickly it can become a problem that only the Russians who are on offensive have to solve. Of course, you also have the fact that if reinforcements are needed, usually they will sit in the back and they can be dispersed and then be called up to places in the line where it's necessary, but they may never actually achieve these really high concentrations that Russian forces would have to in order to launch an assault. And so the result is the only tactic left to them is these sort of dispersed, piddly little attacks that frankly just struggle to seize territory. I mean, you can see the tremendous price that they are all paying in all the videos breakdowns that we do just to get literally to the outskirts of Bakhmut. And again, you see, despite weeks of trying, Bakhmut is still in Ukrainian hands, and Avdiivka looking fine, looking just a-okay. Donetsk City, really, you also have seen so very little progress. You see that in, we'll say the past maybe 3 months, they've seized 1 to 2 kilometers around Donetsk International Airport. Not exactly the sort of stunning victory that Russia really wants to achieve in order to get that propaganda victory and really be able to prove to the citizens of Russia that their much touted army is worth a damn. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Of course, if you want the combat video breakdowns that are too intense for YouTube, the sort of censored stuff that, I'm sure you guys have seen, it's gone viral, you want to become a lieutenant tier, or you want to join the Patreon. Link is in the description. Thanks again to my lieutenant tier patrons. I'll see you all in the next one.